Okay, and that should be us live, I believe. So, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. Welcome to this Sustainable Procurement Pledge event for November, 19th of November. And this subject matter really touches on actually two of the teams within the Sustainable Procurement Pledge. This event today is being run by the Pharma chapter, the Pharmaceuticals and Life Sciences chapter. But obviously the SPP also has a human rights chapter. And it's really crossover that we're talking about here. The work we're doing today and the focus today will be on something called the Responsible Health Initiative, which is really a focus for pharmaceutical companies. But if you've got a deep, passionate interest in human rights in supply chain of any sector, please do look up the SPP human rights team as well. And perhaps if one of the team would kindly put the link to that team in the chat, that would be amazing. But for today, this is the Pharma SPP chapter, and welcome to the call. So subject matter for today, as it says on screen, driving human rights, and we've got joined by some fantastic speakers from AstraZeneca, from Pfizer, and from EcoVadis. So we'll welcome those people in a moment. But we'll start with a poll before then I hand on to Anna and Teresa to really set the context for procurement. So why is it that procurement, clearly the focus of SPP members, why is procurement should be focused on human and labour rights, and thinking about that in sourcing, in contracting, in supply performance management, and the supply performance management and looking at how suppliers really perform on human rights is why we've introduced EcoVadis. Hopefully many of you will be familiar with EcoVadis tool and system, and we'll focus on that and how that can support driving change, positive change and positive outcomes in the supply chains you work with. So first of all, if we want to step onto the poll, and thank you, Rachel, for driving this.
Should be coming up in just a second.
Yeah. Great to see we've got over 60 people on the call. So it's a simple question just to kind of give us some context of where is everyone at? Not physically, but where is everyone at today in terms of your knowledge and understanding of human rights? Rachel, I don't know if we need to do anything to get that on the screen, but I've just got the slide up just so you're aware. We'll give it a moment. Rachel, would we expect to see it? Aha, brilliant. Here it comes. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. Fantastic. So, yeah, if everybody just wants to give us a position so we understand, kind of know your audience, where do you feel your understanding of human rights is in your own category? Perhaps you've not started thinking about it, but perhaps you really are also really deeply engaged in the subject. So I think we're just getting half. Got 50% of the people on the call have now responded, so we'll give it another minute. But simple click, please, just to give us that initial picture. And I think not surprising, perhaps, to see a lot of unsures. It's a focus area for procurement in many companies, but in many companies it's actually dealt with outside of procurement by compliance or by the legal team or by teams not perhaps embedded within procurement. And that can be perhaps some of the rationale as to why there's quite a number of unsures. But glad to have you here today. If you're unsure or in the weak or even in the strong space, we've got Q&A later, so I look forward to some contribution from those who feel they're strongly embedded in human rights in their category. And hopefully we can help those who are really not unsure or don't feel they've got enough knowledge. That's why you're here today, so thank you. Right, and then I think let's move on to the next slide. And before we get going with the main session, I think really an important reminder about SPP. So SPP has a YouTube channel, so please just look that up and find the recordings. You'll find the recordings of all the events that SPP do. Fantastic to be able to watch those back, to just take the learnings from all of the SPP chapters. Please do use the chat as we go through to raise questions. We will summarise those at the end, along with any people who want to come off mic and ask questions. Join our chapter on LinkedIn. Look up SPP, Sustainable Procurement Pledge Pharma chapter, and join the group there. It helps connect, helps promote these events, so that'll keep you connected with the work of the group. And really, SPP are trying to build this community of 1 million procurement professionals looking to change the world through our buying behaviours and activities and what we do in our companies we work for. So if you're not already registered as a SPP ambassador, please do that now. Create your pledge, and the SPP team will connect you with all of the resources that will help you in the future. Last point at the bottom there, select the language and speech and turn on the live captions if you need it. But on the next slide, we'll get straight on with the action. So I'm going to hand over to Anna from AstraZeneca and Teresa from Pfizer to really give us this context setting, why procurement should be focused on labour and human rights. So Anna, if I can hand over to you, thank you.
Perfect. And thank you, Rob. And hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here with you to talk about why human and labor rights belong at the center of procurement. So human rights in supply chains can sound abstract or legalistic, but behind those words are very real people and very real situations. Today, tens of millions of people are in situations of forced labor or other severe exploitation, and many of them working somewhere in global supply chains. And this is not only in places we traditionally labor as high risk. A significant share is in the middle and high income countries, so in sectors and locations that look very, very familiar to us. So for healthcare companies, this creates a real tension. And our mission here is to improve health of people, but some of the products we rely on may come from unsafe or unfair working conditions. So we can't speak about patients' outcomes and health equity while overlooking the people who make our products possible. So at AstraZeneca in procurement, we focus on three connected pillars. First, respecting and advancing human rights. Here we focus on preventing the most severe abuses like forced labor, child labor, human trafficking, bonded labor. Second, promoting decent work. That means safe and healthy working conditions, fair wages, reasonable working hours, and equal pay for equal work. And third is I&D. It's about making sure that people have equal opportunities and are treated fairly within our workforce and supply chain. So why should procurement specifically be focused on human and labor rights? Well, first, because most of the company's sustainability impact, whether social or environmental, sits in the supply chain. So every sourcing strategy, RFP, contract, and supplier review is effectively a human rights decision. So procurement decides what to buy, what to require, what to reward, and how we work with suppliers, which means that this is where the human rights due diligence truly becomes real. But beyond the impact case, there are also very concrete business reasons, right? Like brand reputation, financial performance and investors, talent attraction and retention, supply chain resilience, and of course, the ethical and moral imperative. So the world around us is changing. And at the same time, the expectations on us are rising quickly as well. Like you all know, the UN guiding principles on business and human rights make it more clear, like companies must respect human rights and conduct due diligence across their value chain. So these expectations are now becoming laws through due diligence and modern slavery regulations, like regulators, investors, and also civil society now are asking for far more than just basic supplier code of conduct. So we're moving, but we need to think about this, like, is it extra work? But it's more about how we work, right? I know we're already dealing with cost pressures and shortages and tough targets. So adding human rights due diligence can sound just like one more task, but it's actually how we protect our supply chains. If we ignore human and labor rights, the risk comes back as disruption, non-compliance, reputational damage, or loss of business in some cases. So what this looks like in practice, for procurement teams, I see three big shifts. First, from generic to risk-based, like not every supplier and category carries the same level of human rights risk, right? We need to focus deeper due diligence where risks are highest based on country, sector, and type of work, and be proportionate elsewhere as well. That makes our effort more impactful and also more manageable. Second, from tier 1 to the wider value chain. The most severe abuses are often in upstream, in raw materials, logistics, or outsourced labors. And we can't just audit everything, right? But we can use tools, data, and partnerships to look beyond tier 1 and understand what's happening deeper in the supply chain. And third, I see from policing to partnership. So it's about raising the bar together by setting clear expectations, also being transparent on performance and helping suppliers improve instead of walking away at the first gap. So doing together through collaborations like EcoVadis, the PSCI, and peer collaboration is key. So let me pass it now to Teresa to share a little bit about EcoVadis because it's part of the partnership that we have, and then I'll be back to share about RHI. Teresa, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna, and hello, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Following up on Anna's commentary, due diligence, how do we get around that? We cannot audit 100% of our supplier base. It's unrealistic. So that is why we go to partnerships with companies such as EcoVadis. EcoVadis is really the due diligence tool that we use to screen our supplier base precisely on all 4 elements that really comprise ESG, because I see labor and human rights cannot be seen in a vacuum, right? Because in the manner that we are responsible with the environment, that we act ethically, and we practice sustainable procurement, we are also contributing to the quality of life, which is, human rights. And the good thing about EcoVadis is that we get to see this holistic approach to ESG, inclusive of labor and human rights in our supply chain. A good point that Anna also made is partnership and collaboration. With EcoVadis, we are, as clients, everyone is a client and a supplier everywhere, right? In supply chains, we all supply to someone and we all procure from someone. So in that duality of our roles, EcoVadis affords the benefit of being a rated company and also having your suppliers be rated just in the manner that you are rated for your clients. So it is an excellent partnership because it fosters win-win, as I call it, in terms of improvement with our scorecards. The way the EcoVadis rating happens, and law, we'll go into that, right? It allows that win-win via CAPAs, via improvement, submitting our documentation, resources such as the EcoVadis Academy. It's an abundance of resources just aimed at learning, at improving, which again, it just benefits the all-around supply chain across the different roles that we all have within them. We all share as clients, as suppliers, we share these partnerships. We have a lot of suppliers in common, a lot of clients in common. And by using this tool, right, that is based on global standards, everyone can benefit, right? It's not specific to a geography or to certain country laws, but it permits the global kind of, as I would say, a global language of understanding and of common standards. So with that, I will kind of go back to Anna, who will touch on one of the EcoVadis resources that we have for this. Anna?
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. And I love how you focused on collaboration because our partnership with EcoVadis is so collaborative, and it also helps us to bring the pool of the peers and other pharma companies in the RHI context so that we can join our forces together and we can do things collectively. And if I go back, everything I have been talking, right, the risk-based approach, looking beyond tier 1, working in partnership with suppliers, it's hard for any single company to do. And then we add to this about the human rights, for example. So we need to have a group. We need to have this collaborative effort where we come together as pharmaceutical companies, as procurement professionals, as people who drive human rights in supply chain in one space and focus our attention and focus our efforts together where we can simplify things, right? So where we can drive impact. So the responsible health initiatives, which in short RHI, it works because it's that collective approach, right? We align as an industry. We like how we work with our suppliers, what are priorities in terms of the human rights. We're part of the human rights work stream. There are other work streams as well, but this particular work stream will look to see what are the most key and important human rights issues that we have to focus on in supply chains. What are the capabilities that our suppliers will need to be able to be, a good partner for us in terms of driving also human rights within their organizations. So we collaborate together, we share tools, we come together through the periodic meetings, and we're building those trainings together. We're building the focus areas and what expectations we're going to have. So through this, we reduce duplication, we increase efficiencies, and create clarity really across the value chain. And challenges like forced labor, child labor, lack of transparency, they're too complex for any organization to solve in isolation. But when we act together as part of RHI, it gives us far greater leverage to influence practices deep in global supply chain. That's the strength of RHI. It's a platform where we pool resources, we align on standards, and we simplify what suppliers are asked to do. And also we share best practices, right, together, what works, what doesn't work, with other peers who are specifically focusing on human rights within their supply chain. So instead of 10 different frameworks from 10 different companies, so suppliers benefit from one coordinated approach, especially in terms of the training. Since this September, we developed and we offer trainings to those suppliers that have been underperforming in the score of the human and labor rights, and they got a chance to basically participate in this training to learn and to improve their policies and their performance as well. So to conclude, is really the RHI is about sharing insight on high-risk countries, categories, issues for human rights, aligning our expectations and tools, and developing joint training and support for suppliers. And for suppliers, that means more consistency and less duplication. And for us as procurement teams, it means that we can focus our efforts where it really drives improvement and make our due diligence more effective, more efficient, and more impactful across the whole healthcare value chain. So that's basically where the RHI comes, and I'm so proud that we're part of this amazing organization and amazing initiative. So yeah, with that, I'll pass to Anne-Laure Dall'Orso, who is a program manager of Sector Initiative in EcoVadis, to share more about EcoVadis and the Responsible Health Initiative and tools for managing supply chain human and labor rights risk and maturity. So Anne-Laure, to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. I'm sorry, I'm finding an issue with my camera. Hopefully it works again, but it doesn't want to start. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. Sorry that you cannot see my face, but at least I can still speak. Thank you very much for having me. I'm very appreciative of being invited to this and have the opportunity to speak to the SPP forum. I'm very touched by the mentions of EcoVadis as a partner. This is really what we intend to be, a support for you to drive your supply chain ambitions and target the harsh but necessary topic of sustainability in the supply chain. So in the next slides, I'll be walking you first into an intro of what is EcoVadis, what we do, how we do it, what is the core element that we're bringing you to help you manage sustainability in your supply chains. And then, as introduced by Anna and Teresa, I'll zoom in on RHI, which is our dedicated pharma sector initiative. And I will let you in what we've recently done with RHI, specifically on the topic of human rights, which is indeed a very important topic. So indeed, I'm a program manager at EcoVadis, and let's get started. I'm trying one last time to activate my camera, but yeah, sorry, does not want to work. So EcoVadis and our methodology, how do we tackle human rights? Maybe to take a step back. So EcoVadis was founded in 2007 and we stand in 2025 as one of the leading sustainability intelligence networks for global supply chains, encompassing 200,000 customers and having assessed published scorecards for 360,000 plus companies. What we aim to do is to empower procurement specialists, such as yourselves, to lead their sustainability strategy with the right data and insights that you can really rely on. We are there to help you make sense of complex global supply chains and support you in decreasing supplier risk and disruptions. The way we do it is being aligned with global standards. So we are not inventing our own standards, our own methodology. We are really leveraging what already exists in terms of the ILO, the JRI, the ISO, the United Nations goals, the UN Global Compacts. We provide our feedback. We provide you with actionable interfaces to enable for a transparent reporting. Those are the three core aspects of our approach. Our approach, which can be defined as an evidence-based management system assessment. What we do is an in-depth check of what your suppliers have put in place regarding sustainability. This is what we mean by the assessment of the management system. The way it works is that you, as an EcoVadis customer, you can invite your suppliers to being assessed by us. We build a tailored questionnaire for your suppliers, and within that questionnaire, we ask them to share evidence related to questionnaire answers. And then we work with AI and human analysts to verify the policies, action, and results that your suppliers have set in place as part of their sustainability management system. I really want to emphasize on the evidence checking, because it is a step forward, not just your suppliers providing an idea of what they're doing, but we are actually checking, and the relevance of the policies that they have, and the relevance of the actions and the results. In the end, from our methodology, you get a scorecard. We call it the EcoVadis scorecard, which details our appreciation of their sustainability management system, and which is going to point out the strength that your supplier have in terms of their management system, and also the improvement areas that we see. And as mentioned by Teresa, or I think it was Anna, or maybe both, we work across the whole spectrum of sustainability. So that's 4 core pillars, as we say: environment, labor and human rights, business ethics, and sustainable procurement. And for each of these criteria or these categories, we have different subcategories, a total of 21 sustainability criteria. And for each company that we engage in an assessment, a questionnaire is customized, meaning that the relevant sustainability criteria that you can see on the slides are tailored to fit the profile of the company, taking into account their sector, their size, their geography. But we really want to have a look on the global spectrum of sustainability and also bring you per each pillar details for specific issues, such as the topic of labor and human rights, as we have identified it in our methodology. The questionnaire customization is based on our research work on industry-specific sustainability issues, and this results in questions relevant to each assessed company according to their context, sector, geography, size. And the the research results in the following knowledge base. So criteria activation based on materiality analysis, identification of industry best practices, and integration of specific sector initiatives or regulations. We try to really provide a comprehensive view because the aim goal for us is to
Eno
help
ti
you
one
have
kuti tamo u ormanu. Imaš još one
visibility. Oh, sorry, I think there was a bit of a mic issue on someone's end. So yes, customer questionnaire customization to help identify core issues for each of the companies that we assess, and on specifically the topic of concern for today, which is human rights, you can see, so in our methodology is identified as labor and human rights. And we have 7 subcategories on that particular pillar. So we have employee health and safety, working conditions, social dialogue, career management and training, child labor, forced labor and human trafficking, discrimination and harassment, and external stakeholder human rights. Those are the 7 subcategories that we look at when we're looking at labor and human rights. And for each of those elements, we will look at policies, action, and results. And here is an example. Here are examples of the documents that we will ask specifically on the topic of human rights. Should those criteria be activated for the supplier because their profile, it is relevant according to their profile? Then EcoVadis, when setting up the questionnaire, will ask the supplier to share documents such as, in terms of the policies, their slavery policy, their child labor policy, anti-human trafficking policy, code of conduct, migrant worker policy, recruitment policy, modern slavery act statements. On the side of actions, what EcoVadis would be looking at would be human rights impact or risk assessments, any collaboration with NGO, any collaboration with the sector initiatives, so on and so forth. Employee awareness trainings, grievance mechanism, or non-judicial remedy for identified cases. Then in terms of results, the kind of KPI or insight that we would be asking about would be disclosing confirmed case of child labor and forced labor, and disclosing number of trainees trained for child and forced labor issues. So this is really at the heart of the EcoVadis methodology, focusing on the topic of human rights, the kind of documentation that within the assessment process, we would request your suppliers to provide, and using those elements, verifying, checking with both AI and human analysts, this will enable us to build what we call the EcoVadis scorecard, which is really the end result that is given to you as a company requesting the assessment of your suppliers. And that is a tool that is there to help you guide your suppliers and inform your sustainability, your sustainable procurement strategy. So here you have a screenshot, an image of an EcoVadis scorecard. You can see that we provide a global score over 100. And we also then provide a detailed score for each of the themes with insights. So if as part of your strategy, you're pursuing a special, approach or focus on human rights, and that was the case, for RHI, then you will want to have a look and understanding of overall, how are your suppliers performing in terms of labor and human rights pillar across your network. You can see on the right-hand side, that we explain in the detail of our score which of the criteria had the biggest impact on score. And this is linking back, to what I was mentioning in terms of questionnaire customization, that we really try to provide a view that is as tailored as possible to the supplier profile, so that you can really understand the performance in the context of action of the supplier. And on the right hand side, down below, you have a description of our sustainability performance scale. So as I was mentioning, our scoring goes from 0 to 100. And standard understanding is that performance below 45 reveals a weak management system for sustainability within an organization. Between 44 and 25, we consider that there's a partial management with a minimum structure sustainability approach, few policies or tangible actions on selected topics, partial certification of possible products with eco labels, yeah. And between 24 and 0, we consider that there's really an insufficient management system in place with no policies or tangible actions regarding sustainability. And we can, in certain cases, also see evidence of misconduct through the elements that the supplier has shared, and the data that we can collect from external sources that come also to reinforce our assessment of the supplier. And obviously, going from 45 to 100, then we can see that the structure, the management structure, is more and more precise and refined and very much details, and that is really, you know, the best practices that we are pushing supplier towards. So EcoVadis as a partner, our aim is to give you actionable scorecards to understand your supplier performance, and from the scorecards being able to drive actions such as what Anna was mentioning with either improving capacity building, corrective actions, or so on. And here are indications on that. So from the scorecards, you can find the strength and improvement areas of the suppliers. We also explain, you know, in the scorecard, the methodology and the scoring principles that we have followed. And from the scorecard, the suppliers, the end user is also directed to what we call the EcoVadis Academy and can find courses speaking directly to the improvement areas that we are flagging in the scorecards. And here on this slide, I wanted to show you specifically on the topic of labor and human rights, types of strength and improvement areas that we can find from a supplier. So as you can see on the left-hand side, regarding the strength, what would identify as a strength is that in the policies, we can see that in place, they have a qualitative labor and human rights policy on child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking, and that they have set quantitative objectives on that specific topic as well. This is backed up by actions such as they gave evidence of an awareness training on child labor, forced labor, and human trafficking, and they have a remediation procedure in place for identified cases of child and or forced labor. And from the results, we can see that they have the standard reporting on labor and human rights issues. So those are considered as, we would have verified the documents shared speaking to these points and considered that they are, you know, of good quality and relevant. And so we are confirming that as a strength. And examples of improvement areas would be, in terms of policies that we have found, the documentation on policies for child labor, forced labor, human trafficking to be inconclusive. So we can find that it lacks quality, details, it's not relevant, not aligned to global standards. In terms of actions, you could find on the scorecard that the supplier does declare measures to prevent child labor, forced labor, but has not shared any supporting documentation available. So this here would not specifically identify a high risk for the suppliers, but rather identify, you know, a low maturity that can be addressed with additional work. And those are, you know, valuable inputs that you can share to the suppliers to help them, you know, set the course straight and get them in the right direction. And same thing with the results. In this case, we conclude that there are no conclusive reporting on labor and human rights issue. And so that's a clear, you know, indication of what the supplier could do. So this is the insights that you can get from EcoVadis scorecards in the topic of labor and human rights. Works the same, for the other themes, but here it's our zoom on this particular topic of interest for you. And as I was mentioning, we have this EcoVadis Academy that's on the side of our assessment process, where suppliers and also your procurement teams can find capability building materials to build. So what we're going to do for each theme, each pillar, is have courses on what are the basic policies that needs to be set up to address questions regarding the environment, labor, and human rights. So suppliers can get support and get a better understanding of how to work on the improvement areas directly from the EcoVadis Academy. We have quiz and they can get, some certifications to support an effective learning. And you also have a collaborative tool that's embedded on our platform to guide your suppliers towards the improvements that are relevant for you. So when you receive the scorecards, you can then enter our corrective action plan and select the relevant improvement areas in your supplier scorecard and send to them a request for improvement on that specific topic. So when you are driving a specific plan for improvement on, human rights and labor, that can be a way to operationalize, your strategy with your suppliers. And globally speaking, to support the suppliers, we have regular monthly webinars to help them understand, our methodology, help them understand how they can understand our scorecards, and how to leverage the EcoVadis Academy to get further support. So this is an insight, on what we do globally at EcoVadis, how our methodology addresses the topic of human rights. And then we'll dive a bit deeper on the human rights topic with the Responsible Health Initiative. But before, I think there was a question in the chat that I can check. Yes, EcoVadis has questionnaire available for all ISIC classification. We take into the ISIC and we build the questionnaire taking into account the industry. And EcoVadis is aligning with the CS3D through some aspects. We are not speaking to all of the points of the CS3D, but we do align with our approach does speak to, partially covers requirements of the CS3D, so our tool can speak to that topic. Hopefully that was clear. And so now I will jump into RHI and what has been done within that forum that I have the great pleasure to lead on the topic of human rights. RHI is a sector initiative powered by EcoVadis. EcoVadis has developed around a dozen of sector initiatives across a dozen key industries. RHI exists since 2018 and gathers 10 member companies from the health pharmaceutical sector. And they all have this common point of leveraging the EcoVadis platform to assess their supply chain, and that gives them a common language to understand supplier performance, really a common framework to then understand and drive action. The way that a sector initiative works within EcoVadis is by mutualizing supplier assessments for greater impact. As you have understood now, the end goal of leveraging EcoVadis is to assess your suppliers and have a scorecard to understand their performance. And what we do within a sector initiative is that the different members of the initiative, they collaborate by sharing in a shared network the scorecards of their suppliers. And this is very key because it has very various benefits. One first key benefit is to reduce the workload. So if all companies are doing the same in their private, network and program, by sharing in together, it reduces the workload for everybody, because a supplier that you would not have been able to engage yourself, then your peer would have been able to engage, and so you will benefit from the work of your peer, and back and forth. For the suppliers, it's giving them visibility to a wide audience, of peer from the same sector. And for the group altogether, with the support of EcoVadis, and in the case of RHI with my support, it gives us an opportunity for sector view data mining. By putting in common the supplier performance, we get an idea of overall how are the suppliers performing. And this is great this is giving us then the possibility to better understand how to approach specific topics and how to engage the supplier performance. So as I said, 10 members in RHI who collectively, work together to formalize a strategy each year and define, core topics of interest. And as a matter of fact, in 2025, the topic of human rights was identified as a key concern for all of the members of the group. And then we got into thinking, how do we want to find, what are the data points that we have within EcoVadis assessments that could help us address this topic? Yes, what can we do together to improve that? So the first step that we had as a group was to have this brainstorming, what are the different priorities that we have? We came to the conclusion that for all, human rights were a priority and that we wanted to dedicate some time and resources to that. So we created a specific work stream for that with regular meetings to get working together. And we ask ourselves different kinds of questions, is each company achieving their human rights objectives? Are there specific geographies and supply categories that they each wanted to engage? What kind of engagement activities would be bringing the most value in the perspective of the members for their supply chain, and what are the key topics for human rights that the members would want/need to see progress on as we go. So that was the first step, and it's always the case in a sector initiative, as it's for about partnership and collaborating. We have to find common ground, so we always have a lot of discussion to do. And from there, we conducted an analysis of the RHI supplier performance. So that was back in March 2025. And at that time, we had 5,800 and plus suppliers put in common between the 10 members of RHI. Now that number has gone up to 6,500. So you can see, how I saw the questions about the slides. And yes, the slides will be shared afterwards. That's the amount of suppliers that we had at the time. So that's very good number to give perspective, and have this bird view of how our suppliers performing. And we could see a bunch of elements. We could see that 25% of the suppliers had a score under 45 on the labor and human rights theme. So that was pointing to 1,540 suppliers where there could be some very interesting improvement areas to work on with, and we had to kind of maybe more urgently address this topic. Among the data points that we considered was also the size of the companies, because obviously we know that depending on sizes, companies don't have the same issues nor resources to address such topics, and it was interesting to take that into account. The sector initiative tools also allow to understand a bit more precisely what are the specific pain points that we can see on the topic of human rights. And for example, we could see that in this network, we had 490 suppliers with inconclusive policies for child labor, forced labor, and 727 had no or inconclusive measures in place to address such an issue. So those are different insights that we took into account to then define that, yes, human rights was a key topic for the group and that we wanted to address. And from there, we moved on to defining, a supplier engagement strategy, defining that we wanted to engage them in webinars, that the webinars would want to tackle topics around basic policies that the suppliers had to put in place. So these were the kind of, this was, the agenda for the sessions that we developed, detailed guidance on essential topics for your organization's policy commitments, overview of how to conduct a human rights impact and risk. The focus was really to give very practical insights to the supplier. And then the last action that the members took together on this topic in the course of 2025 was to develop a joint message and draft together what we call a sponsor letter, which explained the expectations from each member of RHI for their suppliers to engage on the topic of human rights. And I stop here with the presentation. Hopefully that was clear enough, and I'll have a look at the questions and share feedback.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne-Laure. That was fantastic and quite a rattle through a huge amount of material. So yeah, there was two other questions that are in there from Ramo that says, how does EcoVadis detect situations in which a supplier appears to have all required processes and policies and reports no incidents, but in reality, maybe from media reports, accidents may be going unreported due to internal pressure not to disclose them. This is a typical situation you may realise during on-site audits. And finally, the EcoVadis rating is good. Is that a situation you've come across, and any comment on that?
Yes, of course, and we definitely find rarely this kind of situation. The way that we try to avoid, this kind of black box is that in our assessments, not only do we take into account the documentation that supplier provide, but we're going to, compare it with the external data sets and media reports, NGO reports from the ground, I would say, to really characterize. Obviously, there can be things that we don't see not as clearly as an on-site audit. That is why when you engage with EcoVadis as a requesting company, you get the support of your account manager to help you draft, your sustainable procurement strategy plan, and you will have those discussions in which you understand that the EcoVadis tool will be a bit of a prioritization tool, and that does not, make up for on-site audits and leveraging this kind of tool, but it's really an initial tool to help you get started and kind of, go step by step in your supply chain, because those are such complex and big supply chains. You need to get started somewhere, and you need to have kind of, different approach. And more we're looking into partnering with different type of actors to help you, get deeper and really manage your risks. Thank you for that question.
Thanks.
It was a very
Thank
good
you,
one.
Anne-Laure, and I'll just answer, add in there from an AstraZeneca perspective. We use the EcoVadis outputs as that annual update, importantly the annual refresh of the policies, the practice at a corporate level. We use that in combination with site audits that are done to the PSCI, the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Initiative standard. So we actually combine those PSCI audits. Maybe site audits aren't every year, maybe they're only every 2 or perhaps 3 years, depending on the risk that's assessed. And so the annual EcoVadis monitoring and reporting really provides a joint approach, helping to prioritise, as you say, Anne-Laure. So it's absolutely a combination that's required. So yeah, just from the AstraZeneca perspective, that's how we utilise the two together. One other question, Anne-Laure, which I think is a really good one for the sector and actually points to the strength of the RHI, the sector initiative, from Veronique. How does EcoVadis deal with information and information sharing? Is information from one supplier shared with other sector members?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So all of our approach within sector initiative is aligned with antitrust, anti-competition standards. And what we share within the forum of the sector initiative is aggregated insights. We never share a supplier name. The supplier and requesting relationship is anonymized. So in the share network, you will see the names of the suppliers, but you'll never have an idea of who is, the requesting company for that supplier. And that's very important to do that. And then going on, we only share aggregated data, never share supplier name, never mention prices. We're very careful about that because this is very key to be able to collaborate, obviously.
Yeah. It is, no, and that's absolutely right. That's our experience of working with the RHI. But the positive is that a supplier who puts a response into EcoVadis at the request of one member, that scorecard's I'm going to say immediately accessible once it's been validated to all of the other members as well. So it can really speed up putting EcoVadis through your supply chain. As in pharma, we do tend to find a significant overlap between the suppliers because of the specialized nature of much of what happens in the pharma sector. So I'm going to come on with another question, a short one first, and I think we might have covered it from Laurie. Our company is using EcoVadis as their main assessment tool to determine deeper assessment requirements. I think, Laurie, we've probably covered that in the way for AstraZeneca, we use EcoVadis together with PSCI site audits. Anything, Anne-Laurie, you want to add further on that one?
No, I did write yes, as an answer to that comment because that's really the approach, that I was describing. EcoVadis used as a prioritization tool to help you kind of navigate, sort through your supply chain, and then combine it obviously with other sources. EcoVadis platform allows for API integration, connecting it with the ERP system so that you can, then integrate the data kind of in one place, have your EcoVadis data, get into your ERP to combine it with other data sources. So definitely, we want to be a support in your assessment strategy, and we're welcoming, coordination with any other sources, obviously.
Yeah. Great, thanks, Anne-Laurie. Next question is really to Anna Jacobian and to Teresa. This is a question from Emma Jane Allen. So if Anna and Teresa can come on camera, that'd be great for this one. A question for Pfizer and AstraZeneca. From your experience, are suppliers generally more open and willing nowadays to share findings or cases related to labour exploitation rather than concealing them just because they're afraid that you may cut ties with them? As we know, good due diligence recognises that forced labour risks are likely to present somewhere in the supply chain, and if no cases are found, it may suggest insufficient scrutiny. Welcome, Anna, Teresa, your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Rob. Maybe I can start. And thank you for the question. This is an important one as it reflects a shift we're also seeing across the industry. From our experience, suppliers are gradually becoming more open in sharing risks or issues, but that openness only happens when there is a trust, clarity, and predictability, right, in how companies respond. So if suppliers believe that raising a concern will automatically lead to termination, there is no way they are going to share. But then through EcoVadis, because this is a very structured system where they can share about the policies, about the practices, we haven't seen really like a much pushback on that end, because suppliers want to show that they have those practices and policies in place, especially when it comes to human rights topic, because that's an important one. But then also the approach we take is more like we find it, fix it, prevent it, and not find it and exit, right? So, and we give time for suppliers to improve. So we see like a gradual shift towards suppliers being more and more open to submit into the EcoVadis and more open to take corrective actions through the time to improve their scores. So maybe Teresa, you can add on your end.
Yeah, and same as AstraZeneca, we have seen the same. We've actually had suppliers come to us. Hey, my scorecard is new, it's improved. So I personally seen in my role a change to that effect. I think suppliers are more forthcoming, same as we as suppliers to our clients have been, more forthcoming on our ESG information and data. And I think with the advent of CSRD, CS3D, even the EUDR in the environmental space, I think we are all navigating in that same direction. I don't think anyone can now row backwards, from where globally we are moving. So I feel we're all pursuing the same, and everyone is rowing in the same direction, as I like to say. So yeah, we haven't seen pushbacks or hiding of information. No, we have not.
Great. Thank you both for the inputs there. Thank you. Very helpful. Question from Divi's. How does EcoVadis 360 watch, perhaps Anne-Laurie, you can answer this one. How does EcoVadis 360-degree watch filter in the news covered by media and raise an impact on human and labour rights?
Yes, thank you very much for that section. So the 360 watch analysis will be the last part of the questionnaire, like assessment process. So we have around 2,000 external sources, media, NGOs on, watch list that we're gonna have a look at. And if there's something, we're gonna add it in the mix. But then the details of the scoring, as it is, particular to each company profile, I can't really detail and share here. And to be very honest, I don't manage that myself, and so I have a kind of a limited understanding. But it's gonna be, kind of thrown in the mix, and depending on the weight that this criteria has overall, and depending also on the severity of the finding that we have from those external sources, it's going to be weighed in and reflected back in the scoring. What happens is that in the supplier scorecard, you will have the detail of the scoring principles that will have been applied for these specific cases. And you will have filters also in your partner network that will help you instantly, zoom on suppliers that have such an impact, such a new thing that could be impacting the score. So that can help you, sort through your supplier list. And then from there, it's kind of a case-to-case basis on how much, like what was the severity and how that impacted the overall scoring.
Great. Many thanks, Anne-Laure. I think we've got time for one last question before I hand to my chapter lead, Maria, who has just joined the call. But question from Rebecca. Any key reflections on how the use of AI, I think this is for Anne-Laure again, any key reflections on how the use of AI is already helping to identify and perhaps remediate human rights challenges with suppliers, and also perhaps drawbacks and risks of using this technology in this space?
Yes, thank you. So I really like the last point of your question. I think it really is reflected in the way that us, EcoVadis, we've always been leveraging that tool. Our initial approach was always, our standard approach is always a human verification. And now that AI is more accessible, and, we're also leveraging that to facilitate and I think to increase our power of action, in a sense that you can imagine that the analysis time with the human experts has always been a bit of a challenge at EcoVadis, because we give feedback on the questionnaire between 6 and 8 weeks. So AI will be a powerful tool to accelerate, and so you would have your supplier results faster, so you can run your campaigns of assessment way faster. But at EcoVadis, we're very keen on always keeping the human verification step, because that's the one way to avoid, mistakes and miscalculation, even if there's always a component of human error, obviously. But yeah, so we're always walking, that delicate balance, and for us, it really goes hand in hand.
Yeah, no, thank you, Anne-Laure, and I think we agree with that. I've just talking to one of the big four auditors recently. I think they're seeing an increase in their verification work as AI, I think, produces lots of results, but absolutely needs that human verification. So fantastic that EcoVadis continue to use that really structured approach, rigorous approach to check what people are putting in. But with a few minutes left, Maria, I'm going to hand to you to provide us with a close. But thank you, everyone, for all the questions and the inputs. Maria, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So first of all, we, together with Rob, we want to thank you for your participation throughout all this year. We have done 4 sessions this year, and you might remember this was the last one focusing on human rights, but we did others as well, highlighting all the programs we are aware about that can put us together. So this year, 2025, we thought that in the SPP Pharma space, we really wanted to ensure that everybody is aware about the potential opportunity to partner in terms of, we spoke about, if you remember, Energize at the beginning, then my Green Lab, and then Together for Sustainability, because we really wanted everybody to know which are the opportunity to partner we can consider. And this was the last great closure this year with EcoVadis, talking about EcoVadis in itself and the opportunity of RHI as well, because it's fundamental to consider this is not just about decarbonization decarbonization, but the human right as well is a key topic we must always consider in our procurement decisions. With that, this was the last for 2025, but before saying, even with too much in advance about wishing you a great end of this year, and before we start the new year, we want already to invite you to what Rob and I have planned for next year. Still other 4 sessions, 1 per quarter. The first will be on AUTR because, as you all know, this is really going live. So we are going to give an update on what it is and what it means for us. Q2, we are going to talk about that fantastic opportunity, which I'm not sure that everybody knows, but we will talk about the health procurement Europe. Third, we are going to speak about the product carbon footprint in pharma and how this is important for all the pharma suppliers and peers. And last but not least, we are going to close a Q4 next year with a best practice sharing. If you remember last year, we kicked off with that, asking you, what are you doing in best practice sharing on decarbonization initiatives? And now these are a phenomenal success within SPP and beyond. What we want to do next year will be, after 2 years, we want to hear from you not only your plans on decarbonization, but your concrete outcomes. So please start working on it till now, and we will really want to hear from you next year this time. Thank you again. Thanks for joining SPP Pharma. Let's continue the conversation in writing and through LinkedIn. Thanks, everybody.